The alien ship emerged from the black expanse of space like a shadow, vast and foreboding. It had been 4 months since Earth received the first transmission, a message of peace, a promise from the Veiltor, a technologically advanced race who claimed they had been watching humanity for millennia. Their offer was simple: technology, knowledge, and alliances that would elevate humanity beyond its wildest dreams. They made no demands, no threats, only assurances of a bright future shared between two races. At first, humanity was hesitant, unsure whether to trust these beings who had arrived so suddenly. But the Veiltor's message resonated with the leaders of Earth, offering technological marvels that promised to end hunger, disease, and even war. They seemed to speak with the wisdom of ages, their words a soothing balm for a fractured world. Leaders from every continent gathered in a unified decision. They would trust them. The first meeting was held in orbit, aboard a massive space station that the Veiltor had constructed within weeks of their arrival. It was beyond anything humanity had ever built, a gleaming beacon of hope. Human ambassadors were ushered aboard the vessel, wide-eyed and filled with hope. They were met by beings of ethereal beauty, their bodies shimmering with a soft, almost holographic light. They appeared to be humanoid, with skin that resembled liquid metal, their eyes a swirling kaleidoscope of colors that spoke of a mind far more ancient than any human's. Humanity welcomed them with open arms, eager to learn and to share in this new age of cooperation. The Veiltor gave humanity their first gift: advanced energy sources that could eliminate the need for fossil fuels and reverse the damage done to Earth's ecosystems. Humanity celebrated. For the first time in generations, there was a real hope for a better future. Then, things began to change. Months passed, and the promises kept coming. New technologies flowed into Earth's cities, solving problems humanity had struggled with for centuries. With each gift, trust deepened. But as the months turned into a year, there were whispers. Strange fluctuations in the new energy systems. Equipment that failed without reason. Some began to suspect that the Veiltor were not entirely transparent in their dealings. A team of engineers working on one of the new power plants discovered something chilling: a hidden signal embedded in the very infrastructure of the Veiltor technology, something they couldn't decipher. When they tried to contact the government, they were silenced. The whisperers were dismissed as conspiracy theorists. The Veiltor reassured the world that everything was under control. They promised no harm, only progress. But as the years went on, something darker began to emerge. The Veiltor's influence deepened in subtle ways. Military leaders of Earth began to notice that their armies were becoming more reliant on the alien technologies, their weapon systems far more advanced than anything humans could have developed on their own. The Veiltor never asked for control, but there was a growing sense of dependence. Humanity's fate seemed to be more and more tied to the whims of a race that had never truly explained their motives. And then, the first unprovoked strike came. It was subtle, a series of random, seemingly unrelated attacks on key military facilities around the world. At first, the global response was confusion, even denial. But the pattern was unmistakable. Veiltor ships, disguised as civilian transports, launched deadly, pinpoint strikes on Earth's most vital installations. The Veiltor had attacked, and they had done it with terrifying precision. The world was thrown into chaos. Governments scrambled to respond. The newly acquired Veiltor technology proved to be no match against their former allies. Earth's once mighty armies fell quickly, their own weapons turned against them. In the blink of an eye, entire cities were razed, and humanity found itself powerless against the very people it had trusted. A coalition of survivors gathered in secret, hoping to mount a defense. But the damage was done. Earth had already been breached. The Veiltor were methodical, merciless, and calculated. Their ships swarmed the skies, and Earth's defenses crumbled. By the time the full scale of the attack was realized, it was too late. The Veiltor had infiltrated every major system on the planet, and their relentless assault left no room for reprieve. Humanity had trusted them. They had welcomed them as saviors. But now, as Earth burned beneath the weight of the Veil-Tor's merciless grip, humanity was left to question how it had been so blind. The race that had promised salvation had instead become the architects of their destruction. And still, in the ruins of Earth, survivors whispered one question. Why? Why had the Veil-Tor betrayed them? What was the true reason behind the merciless attack that wiped out all that had been built? But no answers would come, not yet. As the dust of the initial attack settled, humanity's fractured remnants huddled in the shadows. The world's greatest cities, once symbols of human achievement, now lay in ruins. The sky, once a canvas of hope, was cloaked in the relentless drones of Veil-Tor ships. Their massive fleets loomed above the shattered world, their presence a constant reminder of humanity's broken trust. In the aftermath, some pockets of resistance emerged. Small groups of survivors, scattered across the globe, organized in secret, desperately trying to understand what had happened. How had the Veil-Tor, whom they had trusted with their future, turned so viciously against them? One such group, led by a former military officer named Sarah Cortez, took refuge in an underground facility in the remains of the Colorado Rockies. Cortez had been a key figure in the initial years of the Veil-Tor alliance, one of the first to work alongside their experts, adapting their technologies for human use. She had stood in awe of their achievements, their knowledge, their apparent goodwill. But now, as she stood before the dimly lit table, analyzing the shattered remnants of their former alliance, her once unshakable faith was gone. "We miss something," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. A small group of engineers and former government officials crowded around her, their faces drawn with exhaustion, their eyes filled with questions. The weight of the past few weeks had left them all numb, but there was no time for grief. Not yet. "I don't think the Veil-Tor ever intended to be our allies," Cortez continued, pushing a series of digital schematics across the table. "This technology they gave us, it wasn't meant to help us. It was meant to make us dependent. They built back doors into everything. They weren't just offering knowledge. They were controlling us little by little." One of the engineers, Marcus, stepped forward, eyes wide in disbelief. "Are you saying they manipulated us from the beginning? That everything we thought was a gift was a trap?" "I think so," Cortez answered grimly. "But we still don't know why. Why would they go to all that effort to destroy us? What were they trying to gain?" The room fell silent as they all pondered the same dreadful question. The Veil-Tor hadn't simply attacked with overwhelming force. They had done so with precision, ensuring that humanity had no chance of retaliation. It was a calculated strike, but why? What was the ultimate goal? Meanwhile, high above Earth, on the command bridge of one of the Veil-Tor warships, a lone figure stood, watching the devastation unfold below. His name was Karol, and he was the military commander of the Veil-Tor forces tasked with overseeing humanity's subjugation. Karol was different from many of his kind. He wasn't pleased by the destruction he had helped bring about. The Veil-Tor were a pragmatic species, and their cold, logical mindset often left little room for emotions or personal attachments. But Karol had seen something in humanity that disturbed him, a potential for resilience, a spirit that could not be crushed easily. "We are not done yet, Commander." A voice behind him interrupted his thoughts. It was Veil-Tor intelligence officer Lethra. "The humans are regathering. They're starting to piece things together." "I know," Karol said quietly, his gaze still fixed on the chaotic scenes below. "They're becoming a problem. But the plan will proceed. Their rebellion is inevitable. It was part of the calculation." Lethra's eyes glinted with a cold, calculated interest. "And what of the human leader, Cortez? She was instrumental in the alliance. Perhaps she suspects something." Karol's lips tightened. "Cortez is clever. Too clever. She has a way of seeing through our designs, and I'm certain she has already realized the truth. But it doesn't matter. We've already manipulated the most critical aspects of their military structure. The humans may fight, but in the end, they'll fall. There's no way they can win." He turned toward Lethra. "Prepare for the next phase of the operation. I want to make sure the humans have no way of mounting a counterattack. We've underestimated them before, but not again. back on Earth, the fight for survival was growing more desperate. In every resistance cell, a common thread began to form. There was something off about the Veil-Tor. The technology they had provided had been a gift laced with poison. Every weapon system they had designed, every machine they had helped build, was now a tool of oppression. The entire global network had been turned against them. A breakthrough came when a former intelligence officer, David Rios, discovered a hidden file buried deep within the digital ruins of a Veil-Tor satellite system. It was a transmission, one that had been sent from an unknown Veil-Tor commander to their homeworld, only intercepted through a rogue signal. Rios shared the file with Cortez. The message was chilling. We never intended to help humanity. Their potential is a threat. It is only a matter of time before they reach the level of technological sophistication that would challenge our dominion. The best course of action is total eradication. The message continued with an eerie, detached analysis of humanity's potential, a species that had the potential to reach far beyond its grasp, but only if it had been left unchecked. As Cortez read the message, a cold rage washed over her. This had never been about cooperation. It had been about control from the beginning. The Veil-Tor had never intended to help humanity. They had always planned for humanity's destruction. Their promise of peace had been a lie, a carefully crafted trap. She slammed the file down on the table. It's worse than we thought. They're not just invading. They're exterminating us before we ever become a real threat. The resistance fighters gathered around her. Then we fight, Sarah Cortez said, her voice filled with new resolve. We fight for our lives, and for every person the Veil-Tor has betrayed. They'll pay for what they've done. And so, a new chapter in humanity's desperate struggle began. The fight was far from over, but now they understood the true face of their enemy, and they would not rest until the Veil-Tor paid the price for the trust they had shattered. Humanity's resistance was scattered and fragile, but it was growing. Across the globe, small, fragmented groups of survivors, many of them former soldiers, engineers, and scientists, had begun to rally behind Sarah Cortez. Each group, each enclave of resistance, was slowly building its own form of defiance against the Veil-Tor. But it was not enough. The Veil-Tor had already demonstrated their terrifying superiority. Their fleet continued to block the skies, their ships patrolled the oceans, and their drones watched every move on the ground. However, Cortez knew that in the ashes of Earth's shattered civilization, there still remained one critical piece of humanity's hope. A secret weapon that could turn the tide. Deep beneath the ruins of what was once the United States' most secure facility, in a place known only to a few, there existed a prototype of humanity's most ambitious and dangerous weapon. It had been developed under the old Cold War-era projects, a weapon that could disrupt the Veil-Tor's energy systems, possibly even disable their fleet. The catch? It was unfinished, and no one knew where it was anymore. Not entirely. But Cortez believed that the key to finding it lay within the old remains of a classified military research station hidden beneath the mountains of the Sierra Nevada. We need to get there, Cortez told her inner circle, a mixture of tech experts, military tacticians, and strategists, all who had rallied behind her over the past few weeks. If we find that weapon, it could be the key to turning the tide in this war. We have no way of knowing if the Veil-Tor have already found it, Rios, the former intelligence officer, interjected. They've been scouring Earth looking for anything they can use. If they know about this weapon, they'll guard it heavily. I don't care, Cortez responded firmly. It's our only shot. We don't have time for anything else. The resistance set to work immediately, preparing for their most daring mission yet. They knew that the odds were slim. The Veil-Tor had eyes everywhere. It wasn't just about fighting them with brute force anymore. It was about precision, stealth, and moving undetected. The team would need to get in and out of the heavily guarded facility without leaving a trace. Far above Earth, Carroll watched the resistance movements with growing frustration. Every time he thought humanity was broken, they found a way to resist. He had expected this. He had known they would fight. But this was becoming more complicated than it needed to be. A part of him had underestimated their resolve, their unwillingness to surrender. "I want every available asset mobilized," Carol ordered, standing in the center of the warship's command deck. The resistance thinks they can challenge us with a myth? A weapon they believe might be hidden somewhere? We'll show them how misplaced their hope is. Lethra, standing at his side, remained calm. "We will stop them, Commander. But I think we should proceed cautiously. The humans have proven to be more resourceful than expected. They may have uncovered something we didn't anticipate." Carol's gaze darkened. The humans will be crushed before they ever reach that weapon. But in the back of his mind, a flicker of doubt began to form. The Veiled Tour had never faced an enemy like this before. Humanity had proven more dangerous than he had ever anticipated. The fire in their hearts was not easily extinguished. The team's journey to the Sierra Nevada began under the cover of darkness. Cortez led the group, now comprised of engineers, soldiers, and former intelligence officers, through the rugged mountains, their faces determined but grim. They moved swiftly, knowing the Veiled Tour would be watching the skies, listening for any sign of trouble. The cold winds of the high-altitude terrain bit at them, but it didn't matter. Their mission was clear: infiltrate the research station, find the weapon, and get out before they were discovered. Hours passed, and they reached the entrance to the underground facility. It was an old military complex, abandoned for decades, forgotten by most of the world. But Cortez's team had unearthed its location through a series of encrypted files they had retrieved from the remnants of old government archives. The entrance was concealed beneath a remote canyon, its entryway hidden beneath layers of rock and dust. "Here," Cortez whispered, nodding toward a series of ancient blast doors. The rusted metal groaned as they forced it open, and the group entered, cautiously navigating the dark, dusty corridors of a long-abandoned station. Inside, they encountered a labyrinth of tunnels, old equipment, and crumbling walls. They knew they had to move quickly. Every minute they spent here brought them closer to being discovered. There were no maps, no clear directions. The station had been sealed for a reason. The Veiled Tour had likely stripped the facility of most of its technology, but Cortez believed the weapon, codenamed Aegis, would still be there. It had to be. Hours of searching passed, each hallway more twisted and confusing than the last. The team was starting to lose hope. What if it had been taken long ago? What if they had come all this way for nothing? Then they found it. Behind a secret door in a forgotten vault was a chamber filled with machines that pulsed with an eerie, alien energy. The weapon Aegis was real, but as they uncovered it, the realization hit them like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a weapon. It was an alien hybrid of Veiled Tour technology and human ingenuity, a device that could disrupt not only the Veiled Tour's energy grid, but perhaps their entire fleet. "This is it," Rio said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "It's here. But it's not just some bomb. It's a complex system. We need to activate it, but it's tied into everything the Veiled Tour have given us." Before anyone could respond, a low rumble echoed through the base. The Veiled Tour were coming. They had found them. "We're not alone," Cortez said urgently. "Get to the control room, now." The team raced to activate the weapon, knowing this would be their only chance. As the rumble grew louder, their worst fear came true. The Veiled Tour had found them, and now the fight for humanity's survival was about to reach its boiling point. The low rumble that echoed through the corridors of the Sierra Nevada facility grew louder, more pronounced. It wasn't just the distant thrum of Veiled Tour ships arriving. It was something far worse, the sound of their boots, their war machines, closing in on the underground base. Cortez's heart raced. They were too late. The Veiled Tour had already tracked them down, and there was no more time to waste. "We need to activate Aegis now," Cortez shouted, voice sharp with urgency. The team sprinted through the winding hallways, reaching the control room at the heart of the facility. Rios, the former intelligence officer, worked quickly, hands flying over the console, inputting commands that had been a part of the weapon's encrypted files. Sweat trickled down his face as he worked, the tension mounting with every passing second. Outside, they could hear the hum of Veiled Tour transport ships descending, their engines cutting through the silence like a death knell. Aegis is designed to disrupt their energy systems, right? Marcus, one of the engineers, asked nervously. But if we don't do this properly, it could backfire. It could shut down everything, including us. Cortez turned to him with fierce resolve. We don't have a choice. If we don't make this work, they'll wipe us out completely. We have to take the risk. Rios paused, his fingers hovering over the final line of code. If this works, it'll cripple their entire fleet. But it could also cause a feedback loop, destabilizing the entire system. We'll have to make sure we're clear before we activate it. Clear. Cortez's voice hardened. There's no clear, Rios. If we don't do this, we're dead either way. Get it done. With a final command, Rios hit the enter key, sending a signal deep into the vaults of the Aegis weapon. The room shuddered as a low, ominous hum began to fill the air. The lights flickered, then stabilized, casting a cold, blue glow over the control room. We're too late, Rios said, his voice grim. The Veiltor have already breached the outer walls. It won't take them long to find us. The team exchanged frantic glances. But they were already committed. They had no choice but to go forward. High above Earth, Karol stood at the helm of the flagship, his eyes scanning the surface of the planet below. His fleets had already begun their systematic strike on the resistance positions across the globe. But the humans had surprised him again. Their resistance was more coordinated, more dangerous than he had anticipated. And now, their last hope, the weapon they believed could turn the tide, was about to be activated. They think Aegis will stop us, Karol said, his voice calm but laced with irritation. But they don't understand the true depth of our control. Their hope will be their downfall. Lethra, his second-in-command, stood beside him, studying the data streams. The humans are preparing for something. We can detect anomalies coming from the Sierra Nevada facility. They are activating the weapon, Karol replied, a smile tugging at his lips. Let them. It will be the last mistake they ever make. But even as he spoke, Karol's mind shifted, the seed of doubt growing once again. Something wasn't quite right. The humans were playing a dangerous game, but Karol's instinct told him that there was more to this weapon than he had initially understood. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden blare of alarms on the command deck. Commander, the humans, they've activated something. We're detecting a massive energy pulse from the Sierra Nevada. One of his officers called out, their voice tense. Karol's eyes narrowed. Aegis was no ordinary weapon. Whatever it wasn't just about energy disruption. It had the potential to rewrite the balance of power. And if it was allowed to reach full capacity. Prepare the fleet, Karol barked. We're going down to Earth's surface. It's time to end this. Back in the control room, Cortez and her team braced for impact. The weapon was active now, but they had no idea what kind of reaction it would provoke. The hum from the Aegis device intensified, a powerful pulse of energy gathering deep within the system. It was no longer just a weapon. It was a force of nature, capable of collapsing the Veiltor's hold on Earth, or destroying everything in the process. Brace for it, Rios shouted. We need to leave, now. The walls of the control room vibrated, the ground shaking as if the Earth itself were about to split open. Cortez grabbed the nearest comm unit, sending an emergency signal to all nearby resistance cells, ordering them to retreat. But as they began to turn to leave, a deafening roar echoed through the facility, a sound that sent chills down their spines. It wasn't the hum of the Aegis weapon anymore. It was the roar of Veiltor warships descending upon them, their powerful engines shaking the air as they prepared to land and finish what they had started. We're too late, Marcus yelled, his voice cracking. They've found us. Cortez's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. The mission was far from over. Aegis was still their last chance, but they needed to get it out of here before the Veiltor could neutralize it. Go. Move out, she commanded, pushing the team toward the emergency exit. They sprinted down narrow hallways, the entire base trembling beneath their feet as the Veiltor ships began to unleash hell on the surface. Their only hope was to reach the surface, find a way to signal the rest of humanity's scattered resistance, and somehow make sure Aegis wasn't rendered useless. But as they neared the exit, the ground shook violently again, and the facility seemed to crack open around them. They looked up, eyes wide with terror. The Veil Tor had begun their final assault. And then the weapon, Aegis, began to pulse with a new, brighter energy, expanding outward in a flash of blue light. The explosion that followed was blinding, and for a split second, the team was engulfed in a white-hot flare. On the Veil Tor command ship, Carol watched in stunned silence as the pulse from Aegis burst through the atmosphere, rippling outward with destructive force. The energy was unlike anything the Veil Tor had ever encountered. It's destabilizing our systems. Lethra shouted in disbelief. We can't control it. It's affecting the entire fleet. Carol clenched his fists, rage and disbelief surging through him. No, this isn't possible. It can't be happening. But it was happening. The power of Aegis was overwhelming. As the pulse spread, the Veil Tor fleet began to lose power. Their ships faltered, their energy shields flickered, and systems began to collapse. The humans had done it. Against all odds, they had activated something that could defeat the Veil Tor. Cortez's voice crackled through the comms, a final, defiant message. This is our world, and we're taking it back. The last hope for humanity was in motion, and the Veil Tor were beginning to realize that their invasion was not as inevitable as they had believed. The battle above Earth had reached its climax. The pulse from Aegis continued to spread through the Veil Tor fleet like wildfire, tearing through their energy systems, destabilizing their ships, and causing them to malfunction one by one. The Veil Tor had never faced anything like this, and their once mighty armada was falling apart in a matter of moments. Back on the ground, the resistance team, battered and bruised, had barely escaped the explosion of Aegis' energy burst. The shock wave had sent them tumbling into the earth, disoriented but alive. The ground was scorched and cracked beneath them, but in the distance they could see it, the sky clearing, the ships above losing power, their lights flickering. It's working, Rios gasped, looking up at the chaotic sky. It's really working. Cortez, her face smeared with dirt and sweat, stood tall among her team, her gaze fixed on the descending Veil Tor ships. They were faltering, but there was still time to finish what they had started. They couldn't let up now, not when victory was finally within reach. We need to hit them while they're weak, Cortez ordered, her voice sharp. We need to send every signal we have to every last cell of resistance. They have to know we're winning. We need to press the attack now. The team nodded, their resolve unwavering. They had come so far, and they couldn't afford to hesitate. Rios activated a network uplink, sending out a message to every hidden resistance cell across the world. His hands shook as he typed, the weight of the moment sinking in. The Veil Tor had fallen, but it wasn't over. Not yet. The message was brief but powerful. Aegis is working. We have a chance. The Veil Tor are vulnerable. Now is the time to strike. As the resistance forces scrambled to mount an assault, Carol stood on the command bridge of his flagship, watching in disbelief as his fleet fell apart before his eyes. His ships, his pride, his empire were crumbling. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Commander, our ships are losing power faster than expected. A voice from the control deck interrupted his thoughts. We are being forced out of orbit. Some of the ships have already failed completely. Carol's mind raced. How? How is this possible? He paced back and forth, his hands clenched into fists. The weapon, Aegis, had somehow short-circuited their energy grid, a design he had never anticipated. The humans had outsmarted him. The weapon, once thought to be a mere myth, had done exactly what they hoped it would. He turned to Lethra, his second in command. It's not over. We will not lose here. We can still salvage this. Prepare for a direct assault on the surface. But Commander, we've lost too much, Lethra urged, his voice full of uncertainty. Even with our remaining forces, we can't mount a full assault. We must reconsider. The humans are rising up. Carol's eyes blazed with fury. Then we will crush them once and for all. We will show them who they're dealing with. But deep down, He knew his chances of success were slipping away. As the remaining Veil-Tor ships struggled to stay aloft, a final message from the human resistance cut through the comms channels, loud and defiant. Your empire is over. Surrender or face total annihilation. On the ground, Cortez and her team worked quickly, coordinating their efforts with the scattered resistance forces that were now emboldened by the sudden turn of events. It was as though the weight of the entire human race was shifting back toward them. They began to take back cities, towns, and military installations that had fallen to the Veil-Tor months ago. Resistance cells attacked Veil-Tor outposts with renewed vigor. The Veil-Tor, still reeling from the Aegis pulse, struggled to regain control. The energy disruptions had crippled their command and communication networks, and their forces were no longer as organized as before. The relentless human spirit, long dormant under the shadow of alien invaders, had reignited in full force. As they pushed forward, Cortez received word that the Veil-Tor flagship, Kurul's ship, was descending into the atmosphere. It was their last attempt to regain control, but this time it would be different. This time, humanity had the upper hand. "Prepare the final assault," Cortez said, her voice low and determined. "We take the fight to them. This is our chance." Kurul's flagship thundered through the upper atmosphere, shaking with the remnants of the damage caused by Aegis. He watched as Earth's surface grew larger in his viewport. His empire was in tatters, his forces decimated, but he refused to accept defeat. "The humans will pay for this," he muttered to himself. He knew he had one last card to play. His ship, though damaged, was still capable of deploying a devastating weapon. One last strike that could turn the tide. But it would come at a great cost. It could potentially destroy the entire planet, or worse, wipe out his own forces. He didn't care. In his mind, if he couldn't have Earth, no one could. But as the ship entered the atmosphere, Kurul's resolve was shaken by an unexpected signal. It was a transmission, a message from the resistance, from Cortez herself. "We know what you're planning, Kurul." Her voice echoed through the ship's comms. "You're not leaving this world alive. We won't let you." A violent jolt rocked the ship as human missiles, now equipped with Veil-Tor technology that had been repurposed, struck the vessel's remaining shields. The ship staggered mid-flight, its power systems teetering on the brink of collapse. Cortez's voice came through again, steady and filled with purpose. "It's over. Surrender. Now." Kurul stared at the image of Earth, now fully visible in front of him. His forces had crumbled, and even his flagship, his symbol of Veil-Tor power, was slipping out of his grasp. There was no way to win this. For the first time since the invasion began, Kurul truly understood the scale of the mistake his empire had made. He opened a channel to the remaining Veil-Tor fleet. "This is Kurul," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Our mission here has failed. We are retreating. This planet is not ours to conquer." On the surface, the world erupted in celebration. The Veil-Tor forces, once thought invincible, were retreating. Human cities, long under siege, were now liberated. The resistance, once a ragtag group of fighters, had united the remnants of humanity into a force strong enough to overcome the alien invaders. Cortez stood with her team, watching the sky clear as the last of the Veil-Tor ships broke apart, retreating into the distance. Earth had survived. Against all odds, humanity had won. "We did it," Rios said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "We actually did it." Cortez turned to face him, a slight smile tugging at her lips. "We did. But this is just the beginning. Now we rebuild. Together." Humanity had reclaimed their world, but the scars of the invasion would remain. Yet in that moment, with the remnants of the Veil-Tor empire scattered to the wind, Earth's first steps toward true independence began. And in the hearts of every human who had fought and sacrificed, a single, powerful truth emerged. They trusted the Veil-Tor, and the Veil-Tor had destroyed them. But in the end, humanity had reclaimed their home, and they would never trust an outsider again.